We now return to A Scoundrel Among Us.
You should be ashamed of yourself. We let you into our family and you deceived us.
So today, ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking about Over the Hedge. Now, I was very torn on what was going to be my first animated movie I was going to cover in 2000's KIDCORE. It was either this or Meet the Robinsons. I am going to do Meet the Robinsons at some point. I don't know when, but I did go back and rewatch both of these. And when I was just thinking to myself, which one do I talk about first? It's like Over the Hedge. I think Meet the Robinsons is the better overall movie, and we're going to talk about that when I get to that movie eventually. But Over the Hedge to me is more of like, just personally speaking, means more to me. Like, I remember playing the GameCube Over the Hedge video game. Like, how many of you guys remember that? I remember having a DVD for Over the Hedge where the opening sequence of the movie was part of like the main menu for the DVD, and it played that same sequence, except for like obviously the menu came up with like play and, you know, the extras and behind the scenes and stuff like that. Like, this movie meant so much to me growing up. It was probably one of my favorite movies to watch whenever they would turn it on when I was a kid. I used to always love watching this movie. So many of these scenes I can quote word for word. Not only that, I had no idea how stacked this cast was. Going back and rewatching it, because I'll be honest, I hadn't seen this movie in years, because it's just one of those movies where after you get older, you know of it, but you don't really go back to see it, at least me personally speaking. And when I went back and rewatched it, I was like, yo, this movie still holds up extremely well. And plus, look at the cast right here. Like, I can run down real quick. We got Bruce Willis, Garry Shandling, Steve Carell, Wanda Sykes, William Shatner, Thomas Hayden Church, Allison Janney, Avril Lavigne even voices a character. Like, this is a deep cast. You got Eugene Levy from American Pie. He even voices a character. Like, this is a deep cast, man. And it is just so funny to go back and watch and see a movie like this still hold up as good as it does, which it has, by the way, no business to hold up as good as it does. This is a 2006 animated film. And this is not necessarily one that is a very like intricate, super deep storyline. Like, this is a very like, you know, front to back, just a very basic story to follow. It only has a runtime of 1 hour and 23 minutes. There are some shows right now that have longer episodes than this movie. Like, this is by far a very condensed package, but is that condensed package good? Boy, it is so good. It is so good. Now, I will say one thing that was the biggest surprise to me going back and rewatching this movie and just, you know, taking this trip back down memory lane was the soundtrack. I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't realize that this soundtrack, so many original songs came from this soundtrack, and so many of them are just a big part, at least in my opinion, of just the 2000s culture of just like rock and stuff like that. Like, and some of them still hit. Like, some of this music, man, like, I'm a big soundtrack person. Like, if it's a good soundtrack in a movie, it really does stick with me. And man, this soundtrack in this movie in particular is just filled with just bangers, and it spreads across all different types of feelings. Ones that make you feel happy, feel sad, feel, you know, courageous and stuff like that. And it was just a sight to behold when certain, you know, montages came up where they play certain songs. It was just like, man, it just takes me back to that time.
You don't pay the tab till the last drop, so we all ride for nothing. La da, la da, la da da da.
So what is Over the Hedge about for those that maybe need a bit of a refresher? So essentially, this was a movie about a raccoon who was trying to steal from a bear that I guess was in hibernation, I think is what it was, and he failed. But before the bear was able to eat him, because, you know, obviously he destroyed all his food, he made a deal with the bear that he was going to replace all his food and then some and have it back to him by the end of the season. So he ended up concocting this plan to join up with these group of animals. It was like some, I forget what it was, a turtle. There was a porcupine family. There was a squirrel. Shout out to the squirrel. There was, I forget what they were, possums. It was possums, that's what it was. And a skunk. And it was just this ragtag group of different types of animals. And they all came together just to steal food and supplies from a suburb. And when I tell you, I laughed out loud when I realized that the main antagonist in this movie was a Karen probably one of the first times and one of the few times, because I even think nowadays we don't really see a Karen as a villain. It is just so funny to see in 2006 that the main antagonist was a Karen. Because the thing with Karens is they've always existed. We've always known about Karens. It's just now we kind of have like a term to call them, and now, you know, you can record them and see them all the time. But this was like the first iteration of seeing like a Karen on a big screen and just seeing how over the top they can be. And it's so funny because back in the day, this was kind of played up for dramatic effect, obviously for theatrical effect, to make the Karen a bit more, you know, over the top. But when you go back and rewatch this movie now, it's like this Karen kind of acts very similar. Like, she's not playing it up. They didn't play this up for dramatic effect. You could probably find a Karen like this, especially in a suburban neighborhood, exactly like this chick. Like, it is funny. Like, this is one of those movies where if you show it to the right household, the mom in that household is going to get very uncomfortable because she's going to see a lot of similar traits to herself with the main antagonist in this movie. Now, obviously, with a lot of DreamWorks films, there's always like this underlying message that can teach kids a valuable lesson. And the one in this one is just more so just about family and being together and, you know, not looking out for yourself so much when it means the detriment of other people that are around you, especially those that care for you. And that is an important message. And I do like how in this movie they showed it by giving us this character that just right out the gate, they show you that this character is not a good guy. He's not. He doesn't have a good moral compass. He is not the greatest person to maybe hang out with. Like, he's just a very slimy person, which I guess maybe it's a play on the fact that he's a raccoon. You know, they always say raccoons have like that, almost like a mask, it looks like, on their face, because they have like that black fur over top of their eyes to where it almost mimics like what a mask is. So maybe they did that on purpose. I would like to think they did it on purpose, but it is funny just to see that. But there's a real message about family. Now, unfortunately, I guess the one thing that you can say maybe didn't hold up the greatest with this movie is that this movie does kind of glorify stealing. I guess if you want to say stealing from the rich, which I don't know how the rules would apply when it's animals stealing from a suburban neighborhood, if you would call that robbing the rich to feed the poor. Like, I don't know how you would do that with animals and stuff like that. So I understand some parents, especially those that are very uptight about what they want to show their kids, might have some reservations about this movie, also because this movie very much so promotes eating junk food and eating a lot of stuff that is, I guess, bad for your body. But this is one of those movies that as a kid you would love. And if you have some not so serious parents, you've probably seen this plenty of times. And it's funny too, watching this movie, it's like, I can't believe some daycares actually showed this, because when I looked at a lot of the themes and a lot of the things that were going on in this movie, it was like, we used to watch this in like daycare when we're always getting told to, you know, eat our veggies, eat our fruit, eat all this healthy stuff. And then it's like, hey, watch over the hedge where they're stealing soda and chips and juice and, you know, a lot of sugary stuff that's not good for your body. And like, there's this movie while you're eating an applesauce and sitting crisscross on the blanket and watching this movie. It's just funny just looking back at it. It's just like, what the hell? Think about the times. A movie like this, if it were to come out in 2024, plus I don't even know if a movie like this would even come out in 2024 just because of the subject matter. And I know I do hate that crowd of people that be like, oh man, this wouldn't fly in 2024. But it's like, there's still a lot of like crazy stuff that flies in 2024. But this in particular, especially coming from DreamWorks, I don't know if they would greenlight a film like this that has like a lot of these underlying themes, but also promotes the thing that it's promoting. I just feel like there would be a bit more discourse maybe about this. Back in the day, people weren't thinking too deep about this. It was like, just turn this movie on and order a pizza for your kids and let them have a fun time. Like, nobody's thinking that deep into it. Nowadays, this movie would have a couple think pieces in a couple Facebook groups, which maybe it did at the time too. Maybe if you were an older person around the time when this movie came out and you had kids, maybe you might still kind of view this movie in a certain light and maybe still haven't shown your kids to it. Travesty by you. But who knows? Maybe this movie at the time still was a little bit divisive. I seriously doubt it though, because I really don't remember it. I think most people that think of this movie think fondly of it, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember that movie. That movie was kind of fun. Doesn't overstay its welcome at all. An hour and 23 minutes. You can like watch this easy, quick, and just go on about your day. Reminisce about it. Like I said, if you watched in the past, I definitely recommend going back and watching this movie. It still holds up extremely well. The animation, the acting, like all of it holds up very well. And like I said before, the music in this, like it hits. Like, go back and listen to that soundtrack. You're gonna add some of them songs to your playlist, I promise you that. And I mean, like, you can add these to different playlists. Like, certain songs you're gonna add to your gym playlist, certain songs you're gonna add to your heartbroken playlist. I know y'all got it out there. You ain't fooling me. I know some of y'all got one of those playlists out there. Either way, as far as a grade rating on this movie, I don't even know how to grade it. For me, it's like one of my favorite childhood movies. So like, I can just go back and rewatch this at any point and just reminisce at what point I was in life when certain scenes were to happen and stuff like that. So if you're asking me personally, if I'm being slightly objective, I would probably give this movie maybe like a B+, A-. I'm very high on this movie. I know objectively most people probably think this is like a C+ tier movie, like it's nothing special. But that's part of 2000s KIDCORE, is that these movies are special to people that were kids during this time period. And that's why I give it the rating that it does, because, you know, it means something to me. And is that bias? Absolutely. But that's why we're here. But until next time, which I don't even know which next one is going to be. I'm probably going to change my mind 3-4 different times throughout the week because I'm having such a fun time with this series, just kind of thinking about what I'm going to do next. So until next one, which who knows, it's going to be live action. That's the only hint I can give you. I don't know what type of live action. It might have a little bit of CGI and stuff in it. I don't know. And yeah, until next time, I'll see you guys. When I see you guys, I am out. Hugs and kisses, peace and love, and remember to eat your veggies.